Have you ever wondered why Brian May's Red Special sounds so iconic? A big part of it is the zero fret, a feature that sets his guitar apart from the standard nut design. But what's a zero fret? And why did Brian and his dad choose it on their legendary DIY guitar? More importantly, could a zero fret level up your playing? Today we're going to dive into the tech, history, pros and cons, and the story of Brian May's Red Special to help you decide if a zero fret is right for you. There's a lot to cover, so let's get started. So what is a zero fret? Well, it's literally a fret that's placed where the nut should normally be. There's no bone, no plastic or metal nut, just a metal fret that sets the string height for the open notes and the perfect height. It's right there where the nut would end and the fret would start, right there. But then there's actually a guide that allows you to position the strings. It's kind of like a nut, but it's a lot wider and much deeper. And so what's cool about this is that all the open strings have a similar height and the same tone as all the other fretted notes. So this makes it a very uniform sound. The key technical aspects is the string height consistency. It sets the string height to match the height of all the other frets. You can't get any lower than this. This is the ideal situation. This is what you try to do when you grind a nut down and try to bring it all level and equal to the other frets. This is already done for you. All the frets are typically made of the same fret material as the rest of them. Typically this will be stainless steel and titanium, and I'll dive more on the reasons for this later. The intonation can improve because of the low fret height of the zero nut. Basically, by not having it any higher than the rest of the frets, you won't get much of that sharpness when you push down on the very first fret, that because the nut might be a little bit on the high side. Another great thing is that the steel on steel reduces friction. Compared to, say, a bone or a plastic nut, it can improve tuning stability. Bear in mind that tuning stability is the biggest issue with frets that are made out of bone or plastic or whatever, because they can bind, especially if the string goes at a slight angle towards the tuning peg. This can cause binding, which can cause sharpness while you're tuning, and then a little later it goes ding, and then it goes back to normal or too flat. And this is what causes a lot of tuning issues. A lot of people blame the tuning pegs, but it's not the tuning pegs at all. It's actually the nut sticking. And then this is why we use fret lube. So the zero fret essentially eliminates all this issue because it's slick and the string moves back and forth properly, and the guide nut is actually a really wide channel so that there's no way it can bind. All right, so let's look at the history of the zero fret. The beginnings of the zero fret are a little bit murky. Some textbooks kind of try to pin it down in the early 20th century. The fretted instruments back then were, with the zero fret, were lutes and vihuelas. Now, a vihuela is a Spanish instrument, and it looks a lot like a guitar, but it's actually tuned like a lute. And the thing is that they used the zero fret, but at that time, for frets, they were using gut strings that tied around the neck for a fret. And these wore out quickly, and they were replaced often. So the zero nut was not real popular back then, but it was all that they had for the technology of their time. Eventually, nuts made out of bone or wood was more durable. Then later on came metal frets in the 19th and early 20th centuries. Luthiers began experimenting with the zero fret again. At that time, they were just simply trying to simplify manufacturing and improve playability, because it's a lot easier to lay a zero fret along with all the other frets that are on there. And essentially, you don't have to sit there and file a nut and get it to perfection, which if you've never filed a nut, you can't go past the point of the same height as the other frets. So you very cautiously grind down and file away, and then you test and you retest. And the idea is that you want to be able to just get it to the exact same level as the first fret, but not go past it. And in doing so, you're very cautious and you're very slow. So it's a tedious process. These guys were simply trying to improve the speed of manufacturing because this is what took a lot of time. Now, by the mid 20th century, zero frets appeared on some European and American instruments. Gretsch, Hofner, Kay, Mosrite, Framus, Vox, and later Vigler and Harley Bent. These were common in the 1950s and the 60s on budget guitars. Why? Because they reduced the labor-intensive process of cutting precision nut slots. So this association with cheap guitars kind of gave the zero fret somewhat of a negative reputation. However, after a while, there was a cultural shift. High-end brands like Gretsch started using zero frets on some of their premium models. And influenced by players like Chet Atkins, who preferred the low action and the consistent tone. And by consistent tone, I mean, when you fret down an instrument, you're basically playing the string against a steel stop. But when you have an open string, if you don't have a zero fret, it's going to a nut. So basically, that sounds different than a steel. And Chet Atkins didn't like the difference in tone, as you'll find out. Brian May didn't either. He didn't like the inconsistency in the sound of an open string versus a closed string. I mean, a lot of people talk about how great this nut makes the guitar sound, but in reality, it's only going to make a sound when it's an open string. As soon as you fret any string, the nut's completely out of the picture. So traditional luthiers still favored bone or synthetic nuts. And in that case, the zero fret remained less common on Martin, Taylor, and Gibson, because zero frets have faced a lot of criticism, particularly due to their association with budget instruments. Common issues include fret wear. The zero fret has constant contact with your strings all the time. And when you tune your guitar and untune it, and when you bend, and just regular playing and bending, that one fret is always taking whatever you do on all the other frets. So that kind of magnifies the movement that all the other frets get, and it's in one spot. So after a while, grooves start to form on the zero fret, and that's been a big issue with a lot of manufacturers. What happens is that ends up leading into intonation issues or pinging noises when the strings pop out and in of that little divot. Again, that's because of the go back and forth motion that you have with the string when every time you bend, and it just wears out a little tiny groove. This also causes a random string noise when your zero fret will all of a sudden put out a little ding or cling whenever you're bending, because the string pops out of that little tiny groove. This was really not tolerated in a recording studio. It kind of dulled the performance when playing live. Another reason that they weren't such a big hit is because they had limited adjustability. A conventional nut, you can shim it or file it, kind of sort of fix it, although it's really best to replace it. It's a little harder to replace a fret. But then again, the work required to make the fret useful is an added labor. So basically, the stigma is that this is bringing in a cheap feature into a guitar, and some people look down upon that, and it deters some manufacturers as well. However, the evolution of the zero fret, and over time, luthiers and manufacturers have addressed these issues, leading to refinements in zero fret design. For one, material upgrades. Modern zero frets use stainless steel or hardened alloys or titanium to reduce wear. Stainless steel frets are significantly more durable than nickel silver. The problem was with nickel silver. It wasn't that it was cheap. It was just that the metal was too soft, and that's why the grooves formed, and that's why all the other problems were related, and that's why I got a negative connotation. But with these modern stainless steel frets, my God, they'll last you so many years, it's not even funny. So eliminating wear-related issues like that cause grooves or intonation problems has been a big push for better fret design of zero frets and more popularity to it. As a matter of fact, Strandberg uses the zero fret in their designs, and so do the true temperament frets. They basically use a zero fret in their design, which is somewhat squiggly too, but it's mostly straight. There's also retrofit solutions now that have come around. Zero Glide is a company, and they have a system that adds a zero fret to an existing guitar. Now they only have them for like Gibson, Martin, and some other brands because they have to be the exact same size as the fret that was originally on there with the exact same spacing. It comes with a spacer, and the spacer looks like a nut, but it has a groove. And the groove, you fit the fret, and they have different height frets so that you match the rest of your frets on your guitar. And then you just kind of glue it in place like a regular fret. You're good to go. They're actually pretty easy to retrofit. If you're interested, I have an affiliate link in the description below. Check it out. And if you want to try it, it's a low gamble. You can easily pop off your old fret. And if you need to go back, you always can, but I doubt you will. The other thing that's improved the quality of zero frets is advanced manufacturing, precision manufacturing that we have now. With the CNC machines and fret leveling, the zero fret is just like another fret, and they're all in the perfect place, the perfect spot, at the perfect height, ground by the CNC to fit the exact same curvature as the other frets, and it just makes everything a lot easier and accurate to create. We're also seeing high-end manufacturers adopting these now. The Vigler and certain Gretsch models, the Strandberg models, like I said, the True Temperament necks that are made, they all are embracing zero frets as premium features. Okay, so Brian May's Red Special and the zero frets. Brian May, the iconic guitarist of Queen, and his father, Harold May, built the Red Special guitar between 1963 and 1964 when Brian was a teenager. Financial constraints kind of plagued them, so they had to use salvaged materials. Things like fireplace material for the neck and body, oak from a table for the fretboard, parts from a knitting needle. Another thing was a motorbike valve spring for the tremolo system. The zero fret was a deliberate design choice, however, reflecting both practicality and innovation. Brian May, similar to Chet Atkins, wanted the open strings to have the same timbre, the same tone as the fretted notes. He didn't like the fact that tone was different on a nut versus the steel. You could hear it, you didn't like it, you didn't want it. The reason the zero note fret fixes this is because all notes played are all on a metal fret. So there's no tonal difference between a bone and plastic nut and metal. It's all metal sound. The other reason that the Brian May liked it was because of the low action. The zero fret allows very low action at the headstock. It's the lowest you can get on the headstock. It's very difficult to make a nut that low and not screw it up. So it makes it easier to play, especially when you're playing chords near the nut. And in his style, he loves to delve with melodic chords and things like that on the lower frets. And this was really simply a part of his sound. The other reason was simplicity and cost. Remember, these guys were amateurs building a guitar from scratch. I mean, they obviously had some woodworking skills, but as far as being a luthier goes, they were kind of going as they went, and the thought of maybe doing a nut and the filing necessary and the filing nuts and all that cost was probably out of their budget and out of their desire, shall we say. So they didn't have to cut any precise nut slots. They didn't have to do any of that. They just laid another fret, just like all the rest of them. Also, by doing this, the zero fret now helps maintain accurate intonation. I highly recommend that you check out my G-string video. The link's at the end of this video. It'll explain the issues of playing chords on the lower notes and how the G-string seems to be impacted more than all the rest of them, even though all of them get a little bit of this issue. But there's other solutions there that can help get rid of the G-string issue. So take a look at that if you're interested, because that's something that plagues everybody. So when Brian May and his father were looking at building this guitar, stainless steel frets weren't very common back then in the 1960s. So they ended up having to use nickel, obviously, which led to problems later on. But the guide nut being behind, it was a simple spacer, probably made out of wood, not really sure, but whatever materials they had on hand. So the challenges were very significant due to the constant string contact. By 2005, a luthier named Andy Guyton replaced it, and he basically said this thing is shagged beyond belief. So he took it out. He left the other frets in, which were starting to get worn because of, the legacy of the guitar. So the red special zero fret contributed to its distinct playability and tone, complementing Brian's use of treble booster and Vox AC30 amps to achieve his signature sound. The guitar's unique design, including the zero fret, has been replicated in Brian May's guitars, which he sells, the BMG models, which features a zero fret and a 24-inch scale neck for a slinky feel. So the pros and cons of zero fret versus conventional frets. Well, first, all the pros. Consistent tone. Open string sounds similar to the fretted notes. They're consistent all the way up and down the neck. So it makes a wonderful playing guitar because of the consistent sound. The improved intonation. You get improved intonation because it's exactly as low as the first fret, and therefore there's not much bending that goes on when you press down on the first fret, which means that the first fret will be more likely the interval that you expect from the open chord. Then there's the low action. It's perfect height. It's automatically low because it's put in with the rest of the frets, and it's a consistent action at the headstock. It tends to play the cowboy chords very well, and the intonation is much better because of this fret. The tuning stability. Now, the tuning stability is amazing because you have a steel-on-steel contact. There is no friction steel to steel, and there's no nut that has a tight glide slot that can pinch or be angled and can cause pinching and a stuck string when you're tuning, which is what really leads to a lot of tuning hassles. It's not the tuning pegs. It's getting stuck in the nut. Another phenomenal feature of the zero fret is that you do not have to worry about anything when you change string gauge. Usually the guide has got a very wide channel. It's just enough to make sure that the string spacing is regulated. You can put any gauge string within reason in there, and you don't have to worry about cutting a new nut. There's no reason for it because the guide nut, if you want to call it that, is bigger than most strings you could ever put on there. And the string just simply just aligns itself on top of the fret, and you've got your intonation set perfectly still. So the zero fret basically just sets the height regardless of the thickness. And this is big. This is really big. It also simplifies manufacturing. Now, this will save production time, definitely. It'll reduce the cost and the setup time, so the labor costs are a little less. Now that I've said that, we know that we need stainless steel frets, and that tends to bring the cost up a bit than over the nickel frets. So there's a little bit of a trade-off there. I think the advantages are lower labor costs, lower chance of things getting done wrong, lower chance of disappointment. There'll be a lot of consistency. Okay, so what are the cons? Well, initially the cons were fret wear, because the zero fret wears fast on nickel frets. But when you're using stainless steel or titanium these days, that's no longer an issue. String noise. The string noise was caused by worn nickel frets, the worn zero frets, and they can produce unwanted sounds during bends and whatnot. But the stainless steel frets don't wear them down, so this really isn't an issue anymore. You have limited adjustability. Well, it can't be shimmed, and that's true. But if you're using stainless steel frets or titanium frets, they're longer lasting, and you won't need to shim them, and you won't need a new nut or whatever, because nuts do wear down a lot faster than steel or even nickel. So these stainless steel frets are basically the key to not having to adjust them in the future. Then there's that negative perception associated with budget guitars from the 1960s. Some players and luthiers still view the zero fret as a lower quality feature, despite modern improvements like stainless steel frets that enhances the durability and the performance. There are still some people that don't like them, and I'm aware of that, but I really don't think there's a big need to not like them anymore. In conclusion, the zero fret is a polarizing feature with a rich history and evolving technology. It offers unique benefits like consistent tone and low action, but comes with challenges like wear and adjustability, many of which can be eliminated with stainless steel frets or titanium or modern alloys. Brian May's Red Special showcases how a zero fret can enhance playability and tone when thoughtfully implemented, even in a DIY masterpiece. So, should you try a zero fret? Well, if you love low action, consistent tone, and you want to opt for durable stainless steel frets, it just might be your next guitar obsession. Thanks for watching. Drop a comment below. Do you have a guitar with a zero fret? Or are you sticking with a traditional nut? Please subscribe for more guitar gear deep dives, and I'll see you in the next video. And remember, keep playing.